Hey folks, I'm back in the office this afternoon, back in the studio, and let's talk about auctions. At Settled Realty, we use three kinds of auctions. We use the absolute auction, we use the reserve auction, and then we use the stated reserve auction. I get a question a lot about auctions, and people ask me, is this an absolute auction? So let's talk about that for a minute. The first one is the one that people ask about a lot, which is the absolute auction, and it's what we're really used to in an auction market when you think of an auction. The absolute auction is where the auction starts at a low price, regardless of what the bid is, whatever the bidders deem the value of the property is, that's what it sells for. When they quit bidding, that's the sale price. There's no reserve or anything involved with it. It's a pure auction as we know them. That's an absolute auction. That's what where most of us are used to, is the absolute auction. The next one is a reserve auction. If you see an ad, if you're on the website, anybody's website, you see it just says auction, it doesn't say absolute. Typically that means it's a reserve auction. Fairly commonly used, for instance, if you have an estate and maybe someone's an executor or a trustee and they have to answer to different people in the estate, they like to have a reserve so that they can feel comfortable in making sure that the beneficiaries are also watching the auction and comfortable with the outcome. Typically, I'd guess 90+% of reserve auction sells because they have established that it is going to sell, but they also have a minimum price that they would like to achieve. Now, with the reserve auction, they don't necessarily always get their minimum price. Sometimes it goes over it. That's the goal, is for the sellers for it to go over. But then again, sometimes they realize that as the auction goes along and you've got plenty of bidders and that's what the price comes at, that that's the market, and that's the beauty of an auction. So it just depends on the situation whether you're going to use absolute or reserve. So a lot of cases when you see a reserve, it's not a negative thing. It just means that there's some dynamics behind the scene that we need to do it that way. Another one that we use, and you don't see it as often, but it's called a stated reserve. And a stated reserve is used when you have, for instance, banks. They have to reach a certain price to keep the accounting department happy, or maybe an investor, he knows, what he's got into it, and he knows where he has to be to make the next investment. And they're willing to let it go at an extremely favorable price. They just state that we won't accept anything less than this. So what you see on a stated reserve is it usually says something along the line of stated reserve or some to that effect. And then you have an opening bid price, and that is the bid price. If only one person bids that price, the auction sells. Of course, if people keep bidding, it just goes till they quit and it sells. But the stated reserve is just straight up front. This is what I'll take. If you'll pay that or more, I'll sell it. I just wanted to cover one more thing with you when you're talking about absolute reserve or stated reserve. Keep in mind, the seller is always doing well because they're in the market all the way through it. Whether it sells as high as they want to or not, they've got a large group of bidders that was willing to meet their goals and close on their terms, so you're in the market. But the same way the buyer, they really want this property, and they're not just shooting in the dark, paying too much. They are right there with the other bidders, and they're in the market. It's a great and super favorable way for people to buy real estate. Anyway, keep an eye on our website. It's kind of fun to see what's going on out there with the different auctions. Auctions, like I said, vast majority of them sell, and people always get a good buy at auction. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, please leave a message down below. If you have any comments that would help all of us, put those down below too. Anyway, jump online at settledrealty.com. Watch our auctions. If you have any questions, give me a call. And as always, I want you to have a blessed day.